Greetings, scholars. This post is about Deborah Sampson Gannet. Deborah was born in December 1760 in the state of Massachusetts. As a child, Deborah suffered tremendous hardship. Her father abandoned their family when she was just 6 years old. Her mother, out of desperation, sent her to live with another family as an indentured servant, where she stayed until she was 18 years old. While she was there, she served doing chores such as milking cows, baling hay, but she was allowed to go to school and receive an education. At the age of 18, she remained with the family, and there she secured a job as a teacher. In 1781 and 1782, Continental Congress put out a call for volunteers to enlist in the Army. The purpose of this call was to help contain some of the uprisings that were happening in some smaller communities. And Deborah borrowed a man's suit from a neighbor, and unknown to anyone else, she dressed up as a man and enlisted in the Army under the alias of Timothy Thayer. However, when it was time for her to report for duty, she failed to report, and it was suspected by someone who was working in the recruiting office that they had identified that it was indeed Deborah because of the way that she held her pen. They sought her out and were able to retrieve the enlistment money that she received as a bonus. But later that same year, she decided to make another attempt. She traveled farther away from home. She bound her chest, she put her hair up in a ponytail and tied it back, and then she dressed as a man once again, and this time she successfully enlisted under the name of Robert Shirtliff. She was successful, and she went to training where she trained with a regiment of 10,000 soldiers. Now, you might think that fear of discovery was weighing heavy on Deborah's mind, and I'm sure it was. But she did have a few close calls, which she was able to escape from. The first one was a neighbor who saw her, made eye contact with her while they were in a training situation, but because she was out of place and he didn't really recognize her, she was able to go undetected. A second time, she was injured during a battle where she received a wound to her head by a bayonet and 2 musket balls to her leg. At her treatment facility, the doctor addressed the wound to her head, but she failed to tell him about the musket balls in her leg for fear of being discovered. So when he turned her back, she borrowed a scalpel and was able to fish out one of the musket balls. The second musket ball was lodged too deeply, and she kept that musket ball in her leg until she passed away. The third incident occurred when she was camped in Philadelphia and she contracted a fever. She was too delirious from the fever to really be concerned about her identity, so the doctor that was treating her did discover her identity, and he did not disclose who she was or the fact that she was a female. Instead, he took her to his house and treated her there until she was ready to report back to duty. She was honorably discharged in 1783, and that's when she returned to her life as a woman. She married, had 3 children, and like other families, she was struggling to make ends meet. She was able to secure a small pension from the military, but it was under the leadership of Paul Revere that wrote a second letter to the Continental Congress on her behalf and was able to secure a higher amount of pension. While this pension helped, it was still not enough to support her family, so she donned her uniform and began performing a stage show in local areas in the Northeast, Massachusetts, New York, Pennsylvania, and received quite a bit of applause and laughter from her stage show as a female soldier. This story and many others like it can be found in the book Women Heroes of the American Revolution by Susan Casey. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed hearing about our woman of the American Revolution today, Deborah Sampson Gannet.